The morning they buried my son, his wife wore red lipstick. I noticed it the way you notice a nail sticking out of a floorboard. Not immediately, not consciously, but it snagged something in me and wouldn't let go. Not grief, not judgment. Just a small, cold fact that lodged itself somewhere behind my sternum and stayed there, long after the cemetery dirt had been smoothed flat and the casserole dishes had all been returned. My name is Linda Marsh. I am 63 years old. I have outlived my husband, my sister, and now my only child. I know what grief looks like in its many costumes. I know it wears red lipstick sometimes. I know it laughs too loudly at the reception and then collapses in a coat closet and can't breathe. I am not a cruel woman. I did not judge Cassandra for her lipstick. But I watched her, the way a woman who has lost everything watches the one thing she has left. Daniel had been 34 when the aneurysm took him. Here one morning, laughing at something on his phone, coffee going cold on the counter, and then gone, like a candle snuffed by a passing hand. No warning, no goodbyes, just the phone call at 7:42 a.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that looks exactly like every other Tuesday until it doesn't. He and Cassandra had been married 3 years. They'd met at a rooftop party in the city, dated for 8 months, and married in a vineyard ceremony that cost more than my first house. She was beautiful in the effortless way that some women are tall, dark-haired, with cheekbones that photographers loved. She was also, I had come to understand slowly and reluctantly, not particularly interested in my son beyond what he represented. Daniel had known it too. He'd never said it plainly. He wasn't that kind of man, but it lived in the spaces between his words when he called me on Sunday evenings. She's busy. She's been traveling a lot. We're figuring things out. A married man's vocabulary for loneliness. He had come to see me 6 weeks before he died. We sat on the porch of the house where he'd grown up, drinking sweet tea, watching the late summer light turn the oak trees gold. He'd seemed lighter than he had in months. Unburdened, somehow. He told me he'd updated his will. "You don't need to tell me that," I said. "I want you to know," he said. "The villa in Provence, the one Grandpa left us, I've put it in your name. And the BMW, I've been thinking about what matters." He paused. "I've been thinking about who actually loves me." I told him to stop being morbid. I told him he had 60 years ahead of him. I told him to drink his tea. 6 weeks later, I was identifying his body. I did not tell Cassandra about the will. I want to be precise about my reasons, because I have had 14 months now to examine them, and I don't believe they were purely selfish, though I won't pretend selfishness wasn't threaded through them like wire through clay. The simple reason, it wasn't my information to give. Daniel's attorney, a meticulous man named Gerald Foss, had already been in contact with the estate. Everything was legal, documented, airtight. Cassandra would receive what Daniel had designated for her, the savings account they'd shared, the furniture, the apartment lease in her name. She was not left destitute. She was not wronged. The harder reason, I wasn't sure what she would do with the information if she had it. I had watched Cassandra at the funeral reception move through the room like a hostess at a party she had organized. I had watched her accept condolences with practiced grace, touch people's arms, say he would have wanted us to celebrate him. I had watched her, 3 weeks later, post a photograph of herself at a restaurant, candlelit, smiling, with the caption "Healing looks different for everyone." I am not a cruel woman, but I am a woman who pays attention. The first time I drove to Provence, it was October. The lavender fields had gone dormant and the light was thin and silver, and the villa sat at the end of a gravel road lined with plane trees that had shed half their leaves. It was smaller than I remembered from my father-in-law's stories. 2 stories, cream-colored stone, green shutters faded by decades of sun. But it was real, and it was solid, and when I pushed open the front door and stood in the tiled entryway, I felt something shift in my chest. I stayed for 2 weeks. I opened the shutters. I had the plumbing seen too. I bought bread from the village bakery every morning and sat at the kitchen table and cried in the way I hadn't been able to cry in front of anyone, without restraint, without dignity, without any performance of recovery. Daniel had sat in this kitchen as a child. He'd learned to play pay-tank in the back garden. He'd carved his initials into the underside of the windowsill in the upstairs bedroom, and I found them on my 4th day there, running my fingers along the wood the way you read Braille. DM's small and crooked and absolutely his. I decided then that I would keep the villa, not out of spite, not out of grief's possessiveness, but because it was the last place I could feel him at his truest, not the polished, city apartment version of my son, but the boy who'd eaten too many apricots from the tree in the garden and been gloriously, comically sick. The boy who had loved me without complication. Cassandra called me in November. She had heard, through some mutual thread of lawyers and acquaintances, that Daniel had left property. She wasn't sure of the details, she said. Her voice was careful, the voice of someone who has rehearsed a conversation. I just want to understand what he left behind, she said. Foreclosure. Gerald Foss handled everything, I said. He was very thorough. Linda, a pause. Was there anything you didn't mention? At the time, I mean, things were so chaotic. I thought about the villa, the DM carved in the windowsill, the apricot tree, the 2 weeks I'd spent finally, properly falling apart. Daniel loved you, I said. It was true. Even at the end, even in the loneliness between his careful words, he had loved her. He made sure you were taken care of. That's not really what I'm asking. I know, I said, but it's what I'm telling you. She hired an attorney in January. I had expected it in the dim, pre-dawn way you expect storms after a week of wrong-feeling heat. Gerald Foss called to let me know, his voice carefully neutral. The claim was that Daniel had lacked full capacity when he updated the will, a creative argument, considering the update had occurred 6 weeks before a completely unpredicted aneurysm. I sat with it for 3 days. I took the BMW out on long drives through country roads, the way Daniel used to when he needed to think. He taught himself to love driving in his late 20s, said it was the only time his mind went quiet. I understood that now. There is something about motion, about the road unspooling ahead of you, that makes the past feel briefly, mercifully far away. On the 3rd day, I called Gerald Foss back and told him to proceed. The case didn't go to court. These things rarely do when the documentation is airtight and the deceased left a handwritten note, which Daniel had, tucked inside the will like a letter in an envelope. Gerald read it aloud to me over the phone, his voice shifting from professional to something quieter. Mom, I know you'll wonder if you did the right thing. You always do. You did. The villa was always ours in the way that matters. Take care of the apricot tree. It had a rough summer. Love, Daniel. Cassandra's attorney withdrew the claim in March. I am writing this from the kitchen table in Provence. It's late spring now, and the lavender is coming back, pale purple against the stone walls, and the apricot tree, which did, in fact, have a rough summer, has come through the winter with something to prove. There are small green buds on every branch. Daniel would have been unbearably smug about that. I did not steal from my daughter-in-law. I did not scheme or manipulate or act from malice. I received what my son chose to give me, and I held on to it the way you hold on to the things that are genuinely, irreversibly yours. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty. I feel many things. I feel the cold tile under my feet in the morning. I feel the particular weight of a house where someone you loved once was a child. I feel the absence of my son like a room with all the furniture removed, the shape of the space still there, every corner and angle exactly as it was, but hollow now, echoing. Guilt is not one of the things I feel. I pour my coffee, I open the shutters, I let the morning light in. I take care of the apricot tree.